like everyone to rewind about 3 years ago, the year '06. Back then, I had never in my wildest dreams imagined a fun surgery game, or even one that involved saving lives in general. Now, you may be asking, Len, why in God's name would we want to be boring and waste minutes by saving a single life when we can do this in less than 5 seconds? Well, everyone, it's time to broaden your horizons with Trauma Center, Second Opinion for the Wii. We're introduced to Dr. Derek Stiles, a young doctor who's just completed his internship at Hope Hospital. Yes, obviously his name's a pun on DS, and his last name's an obvious take on the DS's stylus, but because this is the Wii version, just pretend that never happened. There's no play on words for the Wii. Anyways, Derek starts off with a few routine surgeries, removing glass shards, tumors, and shooting with a laser. Oh, come on! Just look at that and tell me what comes to mind first! Several events happen in Hope Hospital, culminating in a new nurse, Angie Thompson, an obvious love interest, trying to keep him in line. And despite the natural reaction a man would take at trying to butch up and get together with said nurse, no, it takes a careless mistake turned freak accident for Derek to start taking his job seriously. And just when you think Derek's turning into a real doctor, it turns out he's a descendant of a Greek god of medicine and can slow down time. No, I am serious. Despite this ability's great potential for the male specimen, Derek decides to continue being a Gary Stu and uses this healing touch to help his patients. But he needs it, boy does he ever, as the already convoluted plot goes even further with the emergence of a man-made virus known as guilds. Derek's recruited into a secret society of doctors known as Caduceus, who intend to battle the outbreak of medical terrorism with Derek as their forefront doctor. Because for some reason, all the greatest minds in the medical world pale in comparison to a doctor who just completed his residency? Ha! Anyways, you can imagine how the game progresses from there. Derek uses his godlike ability, wipes out all 7 strains of guilt, and we can only assume he gets the girl. Yay! As much of a guilty pleasure as the game's plot is, it uses all the right elements to make it seem real. The drama's in all the right places, the soundtrack is very appropriate with songs of relief, sadness, and terror, and the cast of characters is actually likable. It's a bit of a downer to never really operate on many regular patients after the guilt is discovered, but luckily they got themselves out of that corner with Caduceus' outlying purpose of fighting medical terrorism. So I can't deny that, despite the absolutely insane sci-fi elements, the game is at least presented well with no real problems. But despite how surprisingly good the game's story is, what's even more immersive is the gameplay. I actually have more fun and am better at the Wii's Second Opinion over the DS version under the knife, because switching the surgery tools is as easy as clicking a direction on the nunchuck, and the motion controls for all 8 items is smooth, and this was actually surprising considering this was essentially one of the Wii's launch titles. I can't think of any other company, save Nintendo itself, that made such accurate motion controls at the time. The only jumping controls I noticed dealt with using the healing touch and drawing the star. Sometimes it'll stall and not register some of the movements and end up drawing the most ridiculous star you've ever seen. This actually isn't a problem for me, because I rarely, if ever, use the healing touch anyway. But newer players might want to consider going slowly with the movements when using the healing touch. And it may just be me, but whenever I use the healing touch, why does that one song from Transformers start playing in my head?
You got the touch. You got the power.
I've already mentioned the music, but it really helps the mood when the patient takes a turn for the worse. Judgment Day and Vulnerability, the themes for the final Guilt Savado, are extremely dramatic and really motivate you to save your patient, or in my case, just wipe out that bastard spider. The difficulty honestly varies per operation. Most of the guilt are a lot easier with practice, all but one, Defterra, your worst nightmare. This is something that, if the AI likes to mess with you, will ruin your operations. Granted, it's very easy on the first 2 difficulties, but if you're like me and want to XS everything, Defterra will almost always merge light color with light color, constantly spreading more tumors and death. The other side of the equation is the second doctor in the game, Naomi Weaver. Yeah, remember that thing I said about no Wii puns? Granted, she does have a different name, but still, how much did Nintendo pay Atlas to make all these puns? Weaver's operations are a lot different from Derek's, repairing a shattered arm, operating in the dark, things a bit more conventional, albeit a lot more challenging than regular operations. Derek has more than his share of horrific patients as well. For all you doctors out there, try disarming a bomb with your surgery equipment. Call me if you're still alive. The last thing I'm going to touch up on is the graphics and overall presentation. It's definitely a game that's influenced by anime, what with the over-the-top storyline, and even the artwork itself is reminiscent of anime. It's unfortunate that there's no real animation within the story proper. It's all comprised of still characters and rooms, but you'll learn to cope with it. The only problem I have is that despite there being some voice acting in the game, it's all mainly in the operations, and they could have done so much more with it, because the entire cast is professional voice actors that frequent the anime scene. However, the voice storytelling was fixed and fully narrated in the game's sequel, Trauma Center: New Blood, so you don't really have that much to complain about if you're as big a fan of the series as I am. As for the graphics and the operations, I'll admit it's a bit cartoony and lacks some of the realistic colors and textures you'd find when you're maiming the human anatomy. But the idea wasn't to make the player sick and grossed out anyway, it was given a T rating. It's easy to understand why they took the less graphic approach, although there's still plenty of blood there for you hemomaniacs out there. Overall, Trauma Center Second Opinion was just that, a second look at the Trauma Center series with a vastly different control scheme. While some prefer the DS version, I myself am far more comfortable with the Wii motion controls. The game's story, while convoluted and ridiculous, still manages to draw you in with the drama both inside and outside the OR, backed by a tremendous soundtrack and a great cast of characters. The replayability is great, being able to go back to old operations and improve your score to get that all-important XS rank. Trauma Center Second Opinion for the Wii gets the first score from Gamers Asylum, a 5 out of 5 rating. Check back again in a couple of weeks for my next review on Might and Magic 6, The Mandate of Heaven for the PC.